Shabbat Shalom. The 16th reading from the Torah is named Beshalach, which means when he sent. The title comes from the first verse of the reading, which can be literally translated to say, "And it happened when Paro sent out the people." The reading tells the adventures of the Banaiy Yisra'el, the children of Yisrael, as they leave Mitsrayim, cross Yam Suph, the Sea of Reeds, receive miraculous provision in Hamidbar, the Wilderniss, and face their first battle. And without further delay, let's move over to this week's Torah portion reading. Shemoth, chapter 13, starting with verse 17. And when Paro sent forth the people, Elohim led them not by the way of Eretz Pelishtim, because it was near. For Elohim said, lest at any time the people repent when they see war and return to Mitsrayim. And Elohim led the people round by the way Hamidbar to Yam Suph. And in the 5th generation the Banaiy Yisra'el went up out of Eretz Mitsrayim. And Moshe took the bones of Yosef with him, for he had solemnly adjured the Banaiy Yisra'el, saying, Elohim will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones hence with you. And the Banaiy Yisra'el departed from Sukkot, and encamped in Etam by Katzeh Hamidbar. And Elohim led them in the day by Amut Anan to show them the way, and in the night by Amut Esh. And the Amut Anan failed not by day, nor the Amut Esh by night, before all the people. Shemoth, chapter 14. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the Banaiy Yisra'el, and let them turn and encamp before Pi-ha-Hiroth, between Migdol and Hayam, opposite Baal-Zephon. Before them shalt thou encamp by the sea. And Paro will say to his people, As for these Banaiy Yisra'el, they are wandering in the land, for Hamidbar has shut them in. And I will harden the left Paro, and he shall pursue after them. And I will be glorified in Paro, and in all his host. And all the Mitsrayim shall know that I am Yahuwah. And they did so. And it was reported to Melech Mitsrayim that the people had fled, and the left Paro was turned, and that of his Abidim against the people. And they said, What is this that we have done, to let the Banaiy Yisra'el go, so that they should not serve us? So Paro yoked his chariots, and led off all his people with himself, having also taken 600 chosen chariots, and all the cavalry of the Mitsrayim, and rulers over all. And Yahuwah hardened left Paro Melech Mitsrayim, and of his Avadim, and he pursued after the Banaiy Yisra'el, and the Banaiy Yisra'el went forth with a high hand. And the Mitsrayim pursued after them, and found them encamped by Hayam. And all the cavalry and the chariots of Paro, and the horsemen, and his host, were before Pi-ha-Hiroth, over against Baal-Zephon. And Paro approached, and the Banaiy Yisra'el, having looked up, beheld, and the Mitsrayim encamped behind them. And they were very greatly terrified. And the Banaiy Yisra'el cried to Yahuwah, and said to Moshe, Because there were no graves in Eretz Mitsrayim, hast thou brought us forth to slay us Bamidbar? What is this that you hast done to us, having brought us out of Mitsrayim? Is not this the word which we spoke to thee in Mitsrayim, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Mitsrayim? For it is better for us to serve the Mitsrayim than to die Bamidbar. And Moshe said to the people, Be of good courage, stand and see the Yeshua which is from Yahuwah, which he will work for us this day. For as ye have seen the Mitsrayim today, ye shall see them again no more forever. And Yahuwah shall fight for you, and he shall hold your peace. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, Why criest thou to me? Speak to the Banaiy Yisra'el, and let them proceed. And do thou lift up thy mateh, and stretch forth thy hand over Hayam, and divide it. And let the Banaiy Yisra'el enter into the midst of Hayam on Yabashah. And lo, I will harden left Paro, and of all the Mitsrayim, and they shall go in after them, and I will be glorified upon Paro, and on all his host, and on his chariots, and his horses. And all the Mitsrayim shall know that I am Yahuwah, when I am glorified upon Paro, and upon his chariots and his horses. And the Melech ha-Elohim that went before the camp of the Banaiy Yisra'el removed and went behind, and the Amud He'anan also removed from before them and stood behind them. And it went between the camp of the Mitsrayim and the camp of Yisrael, and stood, and there was choshek and blackness, and the night passed, and they came not near to one another during the whole night. And Moshe stretched forth his hand over Hayam, and Yahuwah carried back Hayam with a strong ruach negev all the night, and made Hayam le charabah. And the Mayim was divided, and the Banaiy Yisra'el went into the midst of Hayam on Yabashah, and Hamayim of it was a chovmah on the right hand, and a wall on the left. And the Mitsrayim pursued them, and went in after them, and every horse of Paro, and his chariots, and his horsemen, into the midst of Hayam. And it came to pass in the morning watch that Yahuwah looked forth on the camp of the Mitsrayim through Amud Esh and Aman, and troubled the camp of the Mitsrayim, and bound the axle trees of their chariots, and caused them to go with difficulty. And the Mitsrayim said, Let us flee from the Panim Yisrael, for Yahuwah fights for them against the Mitsrayim. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, Stretch forth thine hand over Hayam, and let Hamayim be turned back to its place, and let it cover the Mitsrayim, coming both upon the chariots and the riders. And Moshe stretched forth his hand over Hayam, and Hayam returned to its place toward day. And the Mitsrayim fled from Hayam, and Yahuwah shook off the Mitsrayim in the midst of Hayam. And Hamayim returned and covered the chariots and the riders and all the forces of Paro, who entered after them by Yam. And there was not left of them even one. But the Banaiy Yisra'el went along Yabashah in the midst of Hayam, and Hamayim was to them a chovmah on the right hand and a chovmah on the left. So Yahuwah delivered Yisrael in that day from the hand of the Mitsrayim. And Yisrael saw the Mitsrayim dead by the Safa of Hayam. And Yisrael saw Hayat ha-Gadolah, the things which Yahuwah did to the Mitsrayim. And the people feared Yahuwah, and they believed Elohim and Moshe, his Eved. Shemoth chapter 15. Then sang Moshe and the Banaiy Yisra'el ha-Shirah to Elohim, and spoke, saying, Let us sing to Yahuwah, for he is very greatly glorified. Horse and rider he is thrown by Yam. He was to me a helper and protector for Yeshua. This is Eli, and I will glorify him, Elochai Avi, and I will exalt him. Yahuwah bringing wars to naught, Yahuwah Shemoth. He has cast the chariots of Paro and his host by Yam. The chosen mounted captains, they were swallowed up in the Yam Suph. Tehomoth hath covered them. They sank to Metsrayim like a stone. Thy right hand, O Elohim, has been glorified in strength. Thy right hand, O Elohim, has broken the enemies. And in the abundance of thy glory, thou hast broken the adversaries to pieces. Thou sentest forth thy wrath, it devoured them as stubble. And by the breath of thine anger, the Mayim parted asunder. The Mayim were congealed as a wall. The Nozalim congealed Shemoth in Belef Yam. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoils, I will satisfy my soul, I will destroy with my sword, my hand shall have dominion. Thou sendest forth thy ruach, Yam covered them, they sank like lead in the Mayim Adirim. Who is like to thee, Baalim, O Yahovah? Who is like to thee? Glorified in Kodesh, marvelous in Teliot, doing Pileh. Thou stretchest forth thy right hand, the earth swallowed them up. Thou hast guided in thy chesed this thy people, whom thou hast redeemed. By thy strength thou hast called them into thy Naveh Kodshecha. The Amim heard and were angry. Pangs have ceased on the dwellers among Palestine. Then the princes of Edom and the chiefs of the Moabim hasted. Trembling took hold upon them, and all the inhabitants of Canaan melted away. Let trembling and fear fall upon them. By the greatness of thine arm, let them become as stone, till thy people pass over, O Yahovah. Till this thy people pass over, whom thou hast purchased. Bring them in and plant them in the Har Nachalatecha, in thy prepared Makom, which thou, O Yahovah, hast prepared, the Mikdash, O Yahovah, which thine hands have made ready. Yahovah reigns, Le'olam Vayet. For the horse of Paro went in with the chariots and horsemen by Yam, and Yahovah brought upon them Mehayam. But the Banaiy Yisra'el walked through Yabashah in the midst of Hayam. And Miriam, Haneviah, Achot Acharon, having taken Hatoph in her hand, then there went forth all the women after her with Tophim and Mecholot. And Miriam led them, saying, Let us sing to Yahovah, for he has been very greatly glorified. The horse and rider has he cast by Yam. So Moshe brought up Banaiy Yisra'el from Yam Suph, and brought them into Midbar Shur. And they went 3 days in Bamidbar, and found no Mayim to drink. And they came to Marah, and could not drink Mayim mim Marah, for it was Marim. Therefore he named the name of that place Marah. And the people murmured against Moshe, saying, What shall we drink? And Moshe cried to Yahovah, and Yahovah showed him a tree, and he cast it into Hamayim, and Hamayim was sweetened. There he established to him Chok and Mishpat, and there he proved him, and said, If thou wilt indeed hear the voice of Yahovah Elohaicha, and do things pleasing before him, and wilt hearken to his mitzvot, and keep all his chok, no machaleh which I have brought upon the Mitsrayim will I bring upon thee, for I am Yahovah Rofecha. And they came to Elim, and there were there 12 Ainot Mayim, and 70 stems of Tamarim, and they encamped there by Hamayim. Shemoth chapter 16. And they departed from Elim, and all the congregation of the Banaiy Yisra'el came to the Midbar Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. And on the 15th day, in the 2nd month, after their departure from Eretz Mitsrayim, all the congregation of the Banaiy Yisra'el murmured against Moshe and Aharon. And the Banaiy Yisra'el said to them, Would we had died smitten by Yahovah in Eretz Mitsrayim, when we sat by the flesh pots and ate bread to satiety. For ye have brought us out into Hamidbar to slay all this congregation with hunger. And Yahovah said to Moshe, Behold, I will rain lechem upon you out of Hashamayim, and Ham shall go forth, and they shall gather their daily portion for the day, that I may try them, whether they will walk in my Torah or not. And it shall come to pass on the 6th day, that they shall prepare whatsoever they have brought in, and it shall be double of what they shall have gathered for the day daily. And Moshe and Aharon said to all the congregation of the Banaiy Yisra'el, At even ye shall know that Yahovah has brought you out of Eretz Mitsrayim. And in the morning ye shall see the kabod Yahovah, inasmuch as he hears your murmuring against Elohim. And who are we, that ye continue to murmur against us? And Moshe said, This shall be when Yahovah gives you in the evening bashar to eat, and lechem in the morning to satiety, because Yahovah has heard your murmuring, which ye murmur against us. And what are we? For your murmuring is not against us, but against Elohim. And Moshe said to Aharon, Say to all the congregation of the Banaiy Yisra'el, Come near before Elohim, for he has heard your murmuring. And when Aharon spoke to all the congregation of the Banaiy Yisra'el, and they turned toward Hamidbar, then the kabod Yahovah appeared in Be'anan. And Yahovah spoke to Moshe, saying, I have heard the murmuring of the Banaiy Yisra'el. Speak to them, saying, Towards the evening ye shall eat bashar, and in the morning ye shall be satisfied with lechem. And ye shall know that I am Yahovah Elohechem. And it was evening, and Shemoth came up and covered the camp. In the morning it came to pass, as Hatal ceased around about the camp, that behold, on Penei Hamidbar was a small thing like white coriander seed, as Kefor upon Haaretz. And when the Banaiy Yisra'el saw it, they said one to another, What is this? For they knew not what it was. And Moshe said to them, This is the halechem which Yahovah has given you to eat. This is that which Yahovah has appointed. Gather of it each man for his family, a omer for each person, according to the number of your souls. Gather each of you with his fellow lodgers. And the Banaiy Yisra'el did so, and gathered some much and some less. And having measured the omer full, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that had gathered less had no lack. Each gathered according to the need of those who belonged to him. And Moshe said to them, Let no man leave of it till the morning. But they did not hearken to Moshe, but some left of it till the morning. And it bred worms and stank, and Moshe was irritated with them. And they gathered it every morning, each man what he needed. And when Hashemesh waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass on the 6th day, they gathered double what was needed, 2 omer for 1 man. And all the chiefs of the synagogue went in and reported it to Moshe. And Moshe said to them, Is not this the word which Yahovah spoke? Tomorrow is the Shabbaton, a Shabbat Kodesh to Yahovah. Bake that you will bake, and seethe that you will seethe. And all that is over leave to be laid by for the morrow. And they left of it till the morning, as Moshe commanded them, and it stank not, neither was there a worm in it. And Moshe said, Eat that today, for today is a Shabbat to Yahovah. It shall not be found in the plain. 6 days ye shall gather it, and on the 7th day is the Shabbat. For there shall be none on that day. And it came to pass on the 7th day that some of the people went forth to gather and found none. And Yahovah said to Moshe, How long Are ye unwilling to hearken to my mitzvot and my Torah? See, for Yahovah has given you this day as ha-Shabbat. Therefore he has given you on the 6th day the lechem for 2 days. Ye shall sit each of you in your houses. Let no one go forth from his place on the 7th day. And the people kept Shabbat on the 7th day. And the Banaiy Yisra'el called the name of it man. And it was like the zerah gad lavan, and the taste of it as it sapichit with the bash. And Moshe said, This is the thing which Yahovah has commanded. Fill an omer with manna, to be laid up for your generations, that they may see halechem, which ye ate in the midbar, when Yahovah led you forth out of Eretz Mitsrayim. And Moshe said to Acharon, Take a golden pot, and cast into it 1 full omer of manna, and thou shalt lay it up before Elohim, to be kept for your generations, as Yahovah commanded Moshe. And Acharon laid it up before Haidut, to be kept. And the Banaiy Yisra'el ate manna 40 years, until they came to the Eretz. They ate the manna, until they came to the region of Phoenicia. Now the omer was the 10th part of 3 measures. Shemoth, chapter 17. And all the congregation of the Banaiy Yisra'el departed from the Midbar Sin, according to their encampments, by the word of Yahovah. And they encamped in the Rephidim, and there was no mayim for the people to drink. And the people reviled Moshe, saying, Give us mayim, that we may drink. And Moshe said to them, Why do ye revile me, and why tempt ye Yahovah? And the Ha'am thirsted there for mayim. And there Ha'am murmured against Moshe, saying, Why is this? Hast thou brought us up out of Mitsrayim to slay us and our children and our cattle with thirst? And Moshe cried to Yahovah, saying, What shall I do to La'am? Yet a little while, and they will stone me. And Yahovah said to Moshe, Go before Ha'am, and take to thyself of the Banaiy Yisra'el, and the mateh with which thou smotest Hayor, take in thine hand, and thou shalt go. Behold, I stand there before thou come, on the Tzur in Horeb, and thou shalt smite the Tzur, and mayim shall come out of it, and Ha'am shall drink. And Moshe did so before the Banaiy Yisra'el, and he called the Shem of Hamakom Massah and Merivah, because of the reviling of the Banaiy Yisra'el, and because they tempted Yahovah, saying, Is Yahovah among us or not? And Amalek came and fought with Yisrael in Rephidim. And Moshe said to Yahushua, Choose out for thyself mighty men, and go forth, and set the army in array against Amalek tomorrow. And behold, I shall stand on the top of the hill, and the mateh ha-Elohim will be in my hand. And Yahushua did as Moshe said to him. And he went out and set the army in array against Amalek. And Moshe and Acharon and Hur went up to the top of Ha-Gibah. And it came to pass, when Moshe lifted up his hands, Yisrael prevailed. And when he let down his hands, Amalek prevailed. But the hands of Moshe were heavy. And they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat upon it. And Acharon and Hur supported his hands, one on this side and the other on that. And the hands of Moshe were supported till the going down of Hashemesh. And Yahushua routed Amalek and all his people with the slaughter of the sword. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, Write this for Zikron in a sefer, and speak this in the ears of Yahushua, for I will utterly blot out the Zeker Amalek from under Hashamayim. And Moshe built a Mizbeach to Yahovah, and called the Shemoth Yahovah Nisi. For with a secret hand Yahovah wages war upon Amalek to all generations. And this is the end of this week's Torah portion. May Yahovah bless you and your loved ones by the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach. Amen.